And welcome to That's Girl Speaks. Today is Wednesday, December 27th, and this is episode, is it 210? I don't even know. How are you? I am Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. I'm your hostess, okay? I was supposed to record yesterday, but I officially took Boxing Day off. I'm not in the UK, but I feel like we should really adopt the Boxing Day. Maybe a select group of us could sign. Because you don't want it to turn into like another like required travel day or anything like that. It should really be just like the day off before you have to go back. You know, like a depeopling day. Like you love your family, right? I love my family insanely. Depeopling day. But then we would all have to have our own yurts to go to, so that might be complicated. Not everybody's an introvert too. That's the thing. This is the last podcast of the year. That's crazy, right? I'm going to record this coming Tuesday, which is not quite a week from today, because I kind of got off because of the holiday and solstice and all that good stuff. We had folks over and a to-do, and then there was the knitting frantic for Christmas gifts and all the craziness. But I will also record next week, and what I will talk about next week is whatever magical things I knit between now and then. And also I'm casting on, actually I secretly already did, I'm just not showing you. On Christmas Day I cast on for my Granito, which is a pattern by Joji Locatelli. You can't tell because it's very dark in this one. But it's a slightly less boxy. And it has pocketses. So I am totally making that, and I'm going to be making it with Beaver Slide Dry Goods. This is their 2-ply sport or sock, I think they call it. And it is 80/20 merino fine kid mohair. And this is the Juniper Heather colorway. Right. What actually inspired me to do this was Joji's always such a doll. Not that I know her, but she is such a doll. That's actually not a good thing to call somebody. I'm sorry, Joji, who is not watching. You're not a doll. You're a wonderful, awesome lady person. Not a doll. Anyway, moments. Sometimes we forget about the infrastructure we're raised in, okay? What was I gonna say? Oh, I was wearing, I have made a sweater with the 2-ply. Actually, I've made 2 sweaters. I think just 2 sweaters. But I was wearing one of them that I made out of the Swift Fox colorway. And I must confess, I don't wear it very often because it's one of those just open front cardigans. It's long enough to cross, it's wide enough to cross over. It's not just like a hang, like a nipple to nipple circumference. That's a legitimate thing if you're questioning me. That's an actual measurement on the abalone. That's a thing. So don't judge. But it's not like one of these like slimmer like vertebrae or anything like that. It is big enough to wrap around. I think it's a raglan sleeve, and I love raglans actually in pullovers, but I think sometimes in cardigans if it's also because it's a very loose fitting like A-line style, and I think for me I have a narrower shoulder proportionately to the rest of my body. You can see like my fat arms actually make my arms stick out. If I were not fat, my arms would probably lay like that. Wow, that'd be like a totally different person. But I'm not her. So like I think because of my narrow being my shoulders being kind of narrow for my actual current proportions, the raglan, when it's also a slightly larger gauge, and then again it being a cardigan that is not fastened, it just does not stay on my body like in a comfortable way. However, it is a great evening sweater because like at night when it's cold in this house, is it cold in this house? Today the high is 12 degrees here in Indianapolis, which is not like that crazy, but it's pretty cold. I was supposed to do things today and I did not do them because I was like, well, clearly it's not a good idea to take my car out into this very cold temperatures. It's probably not good for my car. AKA, I don't want to go out there. like the cold. Don't get me wrong. But there are people in it. There are no people in this one. And it's warmer. And the dogs are here. So it's very cold. So in the evening, especially like we live in an old home, which I don't even know if it has any insulation. I'm not really sure. Probably not, because it's plaster wall. Well, not anymore in the living room. The living room is paneled, which we have painted, which I have painted. My husband would not have painted it without me, but I'm not entirely sure there's actual, like, any sort of, like, fancy insulation in there, except just airspace. So it gets rather cold around the walls and the floor, and so that is a great sweater. And the texture of it is just so pleasant. It is a very loose 2-ply. And when I made it, and I mean that in that the yarn itself is made of 2 strings, right? And you twist them together to make the yarn. In this specific yarn, I'm getting really close to you. How are you? In this specific yarn, the 2 plies are very loosely twisted together. I don't know that you'll be able to see it. The camera's like, I am not a macro camera. But it's very easy. It just takes a little, I'm twisting it the wrong way. It just takes the tiniest little twist to open them all the way up. And so it does have a tendency to be splitty when you're working with it. So when I made that sweater, I didn't realize, I know this sounds so daft, but I didn't realize that splitting, like when you knit, like the thing is splitting this is that you actually only catch one of those strings instead of both of them. I didn't realize that was like a big deal. Just like, whatever. And now that I look at it, like knowing that, oh, that means that yarn is half as strong, and maybe even not quite half as strong, because again, it's a woolen spun, so it already has loose tension or loose twist in the single, and then it has, so I keep looking at it and I can see, like, I mean, there must be 50 different places where, I mean, that's probably a minimum, where I only knit with one of those plies. So and so I just, every time I look at it, I just envision it just like disintegrating when I put it on my body, which it hasn't yet. And yes, I cannot go back, I can't rip out the sweater, because I actually thought about ripping out the sweater, but I steeked it, so that's not happening. I would just have like 9 million strands of yarn. That wouldn't work. But I could actually go back and use a duplicate stitch to fix all those places, or I could just wait till they break and go back and. So it's a combination of the fit not being exactly what I want, and then all of those little splitty places in the stitching that every time I look at it, I'm like, oh. That said, in the evening when I wear it, it's so soft. It is just delicious, and it's so lightweight and yet very warm, and you just want to like pet it, and it's so gorgeous. So I thought, I need another sweater out of this, and so I decided that I would try the Hohi. I don't know how I'm gonna like this sweater. I don't usually like lots of ease in my sweaters, but I'm willing to try new things. We'll see how it goes, kids. And this color is really gorgeous, and I don't have very many things at all, if any. I have nothing this color. I have one shirt this color. For a very long time, I had like the, the 90s forest green, like, or the 80s. I guess it was the 80s that we did forest green. Was it 80s or 90s? I don't know. But it was like such a thing for a while that I had to like distance myself from it. And now I can come back, which I'm happy about. So yeah, so that's coming up. I actually did start it. And it's knit, the front and the back are knit separately, and then you join them, it's top down. The back and the front are knit separately, you join them and then knit to the bottom. But I'm actually going to steek the armholes because I am a much slower purler, so I'll talk to you about that next time. So next time, oh my gosh, that was a tangent. Can we discuss? So next time I'm going to talk about that sweater more, because I just talked about it forever. And hopefully some other stuff. Hopefully some spinning. I've not been spinning like at all because it was the Christmas knitting, you know. You know how it is. So that's that. This week will contain some knitting, some finished objects, and it will contain I wrote a list. It will contain crafty shenanigans, and I think that's all. At some point I'll put in a very short video of me knitting, like Fair Isle style or stranded style. I posted on Instagram and a lot of people thought it was interesting, so it's just like it may not even be a whole minute long, but I'll put it in here. I think that's all. Yeah, next week's episode will contain more about the Granito. It'll contain some shameless self-promotion. Okay. Because there will be shop updates on January 1st and January 5th. There will be Elizabeth Zimmerman pins in the shop on January 15th. And there will be Fat Squirrel shop. There will be Fat Squirrel pins in on February 1st. There actually will be a few in the January 15th too, just not very many. So if you were wanting an Elizabeth and you wanted to shave on shipping. Okay. Okay, I think that's all the nuts and bolts. Next week I will also talk about, I will do prizes for the It's Alive along, or the Knits from the Crypts. So I'll do prizes for that, and I'll also do benefactor prizes for the fourth quarter of 2017. That's right, 2017! I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of okay with seeing you go. It's been a rough one, kids. There's been good things, but boy, it's been a bit of a rough year. So that will be happening next week. Okay. So let's talk about some shenanigans. So one thing we've been doing is we made a bunch of birdseed ornaments. If you've been watching the show for a while, you'll remember we did this last year. I'll put a picture in here. We did birdseed ornaments this year for my grandparents. They really liked them last year. Was it last year or the year before? I think it was last year. Pretty sure. And we used the recipe that you can find online in the Birds and Blooms blog. So Birds and Blooms is a magazine, a birding magazine. And basically it's like 4 cups of birdseed, 3 tablespoons of corn syrup, 3 teaspoons of plain gelatin, and 3/4 cup of flour. You heat the corn syrup and there's some water. Like half a cup of water. You heat some corn syrup and some water till they kind of dissolve and combine. Then you add the gelatin until that is disgusting. By the way, unflavored gelatin stinks. That's right. It smells like a beef's hoof. A beef's hoof. It is kind of not a pleasant smell. I'm not gonna lie. You know, like that bone broth smell that you're like a little bit like when you roast marrow bones or something to make stock and you're just kind of like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. It's a strange smell. It smells like that. So I don't know if you're vegetarian. I don't know that you would, I don't think it doesn't smell like meaty, so I don't know that it would upset anybody, but it just smells odd. Anyway, be forewarned. If you are pregnant and or smell insensitive, just don't maybe for a while. Anyway, you do that and then you add the flour and then you add that all to the birdseed to mix it up. And it is like totally disgustingly like, it's very like homemade glue, pasty. It sticks to everything. So what we do is we put down a piece of parchment paper and then put our cookie cutters on top of that. You also are supposed to spray your cookie cutters with cooking spray To be honest with you, I don't even know if you need to do that, but we do just in case. And then you just basically pack the sticky birdseed mixture into this cookie cutters. And they don't have to be any sort of special cookie cutters. They do need to be at least an inch thick so that you have good, there's some sort of physics thing probably happening with like surface area and adhesion and something, but I don't know what that is. But you just pack them in, all the stickies up, and your fingers are so sticky and you can't touch anything, and it's gross, but it's fun. And you smush it all in there, and then you take either a drinking straw, or we have the bamboo skewers you use if you're grilling things. I cut them into like 4 pieces or something, and then you stick that in there so that you have a hole to put like a string through, and then you let them dry overnight is usually good enough. And the next morning you just pop them out of the cookie cutter, just string them on some twiney stuff, and there you go. We got ornaments for the birds. It's good times, kids. It's good times. And your squirrels will thank you as well. If they're anywhere where a squirrel can get them, the squirrels will be very happy. In fact, our squirrels, I think, actually stole them. I didn't see a squirrel eating them, but I think the squirrel actually just like removed them from their hangers and ran off with them. So for the grandparents, I used like a heavier, like a very twiny twine. Ours I just put up with yarn last year, and the squirrels are like, we'll take that now, which I'm fine with. So we did that. That was fun. I also made a bunch of beeswax candles this winter for our solstice gathering. For some reason, I got in my head that the candles all needed to be beeswax, and that was somehow very important to me. I don't know why. I'm not like a super, I should be more antitoxin than I am, but like I'm not, I don't know, there's some reason it felt like they had to be beeswax. You get these things in your head, right? Anyway, we needed 2 3-inch pillar candles. And I went online to look for them, and they're like $20-something a piece, $28 or something like that a piece. And I had like but I can buy beeswax for like $7.50 a pound. And I have 2 pounds of it in my closet that have been there for a million years because I got them to do something else with a long time ago. I should clearly just learn to make beeswax candles. Yes, you should clearly learn. It didn't seem like in my head it would be a big deal. Like, right, you melt the wax, you pour it in a mold, ta-da. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Not really, but it is. Because you have to, like, find the right wick, because beeswax is crazy and only melts at a crazy high temperature. 145, apparently. So, like, it has to be a proportionately larger wick, but those are very difficult to find. And then actually the ones we did find, they said they were the right size, but I think they are liars because they were not the right size. And so, like, we have a 3-inch pillar candle, which is like this big around, right? But the wax only melts in like this big of a circumference. So, that's not what you want. And yes, I do know you have to burn beeswax candles for longer. Like a paraffin candle, you can burn it for 20 minutes and blow it out. It's fine. Beeswax candles, you really do need to burn for like a minimum of 3 hours or something like that. Again, because they require a hotter temperature to ignite, I guess. Anyway, so it seems like so I just bought the mold. I was like, okay, the mold is like $10. I have wax in the cupboard. I'm like, I've saved us so much money. By the time I bought like 3 different wick sizes, because again, I kept buying one and it wouldn't work, so I had to go to the next one. And then ultimately what I ended up doing is twisting 2 wicks together anyway. Because really, even the largest one did not work. So, I think I don't really, to be honest, I still saved money, but it took a lot more work. And I might have saved like $1. Whatever. did I really save money? I'm like, now I'm like thinking about it, like, okay, that was $18, and that was $28, and that was $38, and then that was $49, and then that was another 10. It was 50. Okay, it's $59. Oh my gosh, plus that. Oh crap. Okay, I didn't save any money. But I do still have enough supplies to make at least. See, I still have 3 pounds of wax, so I still have it because of course I had to buy more beeswax. Hello. Because not only do we need to make 2 3-inch taper or pillar candles, but we also need to make a bunch of like votive size candles. Because clearly can't buy the 100 for $3.99 tea lights. No, no, no. They must be beeswax. In my head. I don't think we really saved money, but whatever. Now we have supplies to make more candles. Ta-da! Anyway, it was still cool though, and we did get all beeswax candles, which was pretty fun. I don't know. I'm still okay with it. I mean, I really did. When I was doing it, I was like, I am such an idiot. Why didn't I just buy those 2 stinking candles? Well, then I wanted to buy all those votives too. I mean, tea lights. Because you can buy, what was it, like 2. See, no, I think I saved money. I totally did. I, at minimum, broke even. But anyway, in the process of making all these candles, when I kept having things not work, I was like, what have I done? I should have just bought those 2 $24 candles and those tea lights and just shut up about it all. Or maybe I should have released the need to have them all be beeswax. Okay, that's another thing I could have done. But whatever. Sometimes you just gotta be crazy. Sometimes you have to make hours of extra work for yourself in the busiest season of all. Ding! Because clearly when one takes a break from sewing, she must fill her time with all sorts of other things that don't involve not doing much. Clearly. But whatever. Now we have a bunch of candles, which is kind of fun. Okay. You know, again, post-apocalyptic life skills, kids. I'm on it. I can filter me some beeswax with a t-shirt. I can twist together random things to make wicks with. I'm good. I had to buy silicone. That was the other thing I forgot to count the price of. I had to buy silicone spray to spray down the inside of the can of the pillar mold because apparently beeswax is so sticky. The one thing I read did not tell me that. And so I had this candle that would not come out of the mold, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? Apparently beeswax is so sticky that it doesn't like to come out of candle molds. So I ended up buying scuba silicone spray, which totally worked, by the way. Every one of my other candles came out straight away. The nice thing about candles, though, when you do mess them up, you can just remelt everything, which is pretty awesome. Like, there were at least 6 candles that had to be remelted over the course of this week, 2 weeks period, because they tunneled or they were crazy. Or one of them was like a torch. Like, one of them, I went too crazy with the wick, and it was really like, we're gonna set the house on fire. Was that kind of crazy? Whatever. Memories. Just did it so I would have a story to tell, right? That's totally it. That's all it was. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness. Maybe we should talk about knitting. Okay, so I finished my lambing mitts, which I actually gave to my mother for Christmas. I'll put a picture in here. So these are my lambing mitts. You can find the lambing, like Lambing. It's a free pattern available from Tolt Wool, and you can find it on their blog. You can find it through Ravelry, whatever. And then that was hand spun that I made from a farm that is here in Indiana that is no longer a farm. It was a sheep farm that is no longer in business. So those are local Indiana Shetland yarns. Okay. So those are done, and those are my favorite mitts of all time. I'm going to make some more, not of those. I'm going to make some more different ones, like different styles and stuff. But man, I just really like those lambing mitts quite a bit. They're so handy because, again, that top part flips down, and it'll cover your hands when you go outside or when you're driving, but you can very easily still access stuff, so they're the best. Okay. The next thing I made were a pair of felted clogs. And then those were made with Cascade 220, one of the Heathers colorways. And they basically they only used like 2.5 skeins of yarn. That's the Fiber Trends felted slipper, felted clog pattern. And it calls for something, it calls for like 800 yards or something like that. But really, I was able to, 600, okay, it's not that crazy off. No, it was 2.5 skeins of yarn, so that's like 500 yards. Anyway, neither here nor there. For a men's, like size 9 slipper. That yarn was so much easier to felt. Cascade 220 Heathers were super easy to felt. I think maybe I've only made them with like Peace Fleece or other more rustic wools that probably have nylon in them, now that I'm thinking about it. And I've always had the worst trouble getting things to felt. I mean, like, at some point, like at this time, I even looked up like how to make your own washing machine, because I thought, because our water in our washer never gets warm. I mean, it might be like less than icy, but really not. Not in the winter anyway. So I thought, well, maybe I'll use like boiling water and just wash them in a bucket. So I looked up like how to like drill holes in your plunger and like this 2-bucket system. So I was all ready to like make my own washing machine if I needed to, but then I didn't need to. They washed and they felted in 3 washes. What? That's so much easier. I should really only make them with merino or things like it in the future. So much easier to felt. Oh my goodness. So those went well. Okay. Oh, and then the next thing I have to show you, that's a finished object, is my Swancho. And I made this for my grandmother because she saw the one I made for my mom and liked it. So I made her one. I have it with me, you'll notice that. Because I wrapped it up for her, even though the sleeves weren't knit yet. I mean, because it's Swancho, it's just like this much sleeve. Here. It's this much sleeve. But I didn't get that far. So my husband saw me wrapping it up and he's like, "You're gonna wrap up the thing even though it's not finished?" I was like, "Hello? Yes, I am." So I am gonna finish it and then give it back to her. My daughter is currently at my mom's house. So we will be doing an exchange of that child in the near future. And I will give this to her to pass along to Mama. So that is the Swancho. This is the smaller of the 2 sizes. It's a litany of crazy yarns. Everything's held double. So the main color is Knit Picks Stroll in the Jackrabbit colorway. Then the gold, I believe, is Marigold Jen's BFL fingering in the Butterscotch colorway, I think, because this was in this. These other things were all in the scrap bin, so I'm not completely sure about any of them. And then the darker blue that's more solid is actually 2 different yarns. It is like a Lion Brand sock yarn that's so skinny I don't ever want to make socks out of it, and then a strand of Harrisville's Shetland, right, is the fingering weight. I believe so. And I will try to remember to put the colors in the show notes. Okay. And then this one, I don't know if you can see from this far away. This one is 2 strands of 2 different colors. So the blue is, the light blue, like the icy blue, is a Quince & Company Finch, and I don't know what the colorway is. And then the darker color is a skein of Barocco Alpaca Ultralight, or whatever it is. I know, right? This is what happens when you knit from scraps, y'all. Like, you just can't remember. But I think it turned out pretty well. I think it looks pretty cute. I like the colors that I chose. I enjoy the fact that one of them is marled. I think it just gives it a little bit more depth. It doesn't need it, but it's fun. I did need to decrease the circumference just a little bit because the pattern is written for DK, and this was definitely a worsted. Fingerings held together are usually worsted. So I decreased it by, I think, like something like 10% or something. It wasn't much, but it was a little bit. So there it is. Okay. So hopefully Mama likes it. I have to weave in all the ends still. Full disclosure. There are many an end to weave in. And I can't try it on because obviously it is too small for me. But I think it's pretty cute. Okay, so I forgot to mention something that I had meant to mention and actually wrote in the show notes, but then forgot to communicate to you. So this is stranded color work. Some people call it Fair Isle, some people call it whatever. But traditionally it's done with a woolen spun yarn. And the thing about woolen spun yarns is they have more air in them. And they have like a hairiness to them often because, again, they don't have the tightest spin to their structure. So lots of times the little ends of the sheep's wool kind of stick out from the main strand. So, for example, I don't know if you can see or not, but they'll have much more of a halo. Now this one also contains a little bit of nylon, or not nylon, nature's nylon, also known as mohair. But they have much more of a halo than your traditional like worsted spun yarns, which are much tighter. This yarn is twisted much tighter and it locks in the ends of the sheep's wool fiber. So they generally are smoother than the woolen spun yarns. So when you're doing something like color work, that can work against you. One good thing is if you want a very stark contrast, a worsted spun yarn will give it to you because you're not going to have that fuzziness of the woolen spun yarn. But the great thing about the fuzziness of the woolen spun yarn is A, it hides a multitude of errors. So like if you're if your gauge gets a little off or your carrier floats a little too loosely in some place, it doesn't seem to show up as much. That haziness gives you a little bit more wiggle room instead of the worsted, which you have a little bit, it's a little bit harder to kind of cover up your mistakes. So, not always. Again, I knit this sweater for my mom out of worsted spun commercial yarns like Cascade 220 and a hand dyed that was also worsted weight. But I think maybe because this is superwash, it was even harder to keep floats and stuff even. I don't want to say even, but I tended to float my yarn a little looser than I needed to. And so because of that, there are places where if you, now I'm not too worried about it because this garment is not a snug fit. It has lots of positive ease. But if it were a snug fitting garment, it could be very problematic because there are some places, oh, so you can see it really well right there, where that middle, where I've caught floats, in that middle of that diamond, I can't tell love from mine. It's embarrassing. The middle of the diamond, there, and then there. You can see the yarns behind it, where I've caught the floats. So I actually thought, well, maybe I'll go back. You can do a couple of different things. You can do some duplicate stitch over it. But then that kind of showed up because, of course, it's doubling the thickness of that middle row, which does bulk it up. You can also take a strand of yarn and run it along the back, kind of like ziggy-zag it, to just kind of pull it together a little bit. But ultimately, I decided not to do either of those things because, again, because it has positive ease, I'm not too worried about it. But I just wanted to pass that along. If you are working, again, it didn't seem to happen with the regular worsted spun yarns, but especially these superwash it seemed to be much more noticeable. And part of that might be because I was trying to catch my floats more often on this project because my grandmother has rheumatoid arthritis. And so it's hard for her sometimes to have the best dexterity. And when you put on a stranded garment, of course you're like holding in your hands a little bit to not catch on floats. So I caught them more often, and that might be why it's showing up more. And really, it's only in that one section, this kind of diamond section right here, that I'm noticing it at all. But I did want to pass that along, just to be aware. If I did this again, what I would do is try to stagger my float catching stitches. So oftentimes I catch the float like on that middle spine stitch. So maybe I would try to catch it on that middle one, and then on the next row, catch it on either side, just to help with that middle stitch kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Also, if I had carried my yarns a little tighter, that would have probably not happened. But that is a sticky wicket, right? Because you definitely, I would rather have the float show a little bit and have the floats be loose and flexible and stretchy than not. Because the other alternative, of course, is the floats are too tight and then the garment can't stretch at all, and it never feels quite comfortable when that happens. Again, probably not as big a deal as something that has positive ease, but whatever. So I think that's what I want to say. So yay that. Oh, I just had a moment where I was like, is this too tiny to get around any human buddy's head? But it's not. It would actually go around my giant head. Sometimes you just have this small. I'm not kidding you. When I was doing these sleeves, I was like, this is impossible. Again, they're not actually sleeves. They're just like, they go up to like here. I was like, this is definitely not going to fit a human. It totally even fits my fat arms. See? It just looks so tiny. Anyway. Ta-da! There's that. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. And then I think the only other thing I have to show you, let me consult my bullet journal, is the... Yes. Oh, duh. I should have mentioned this earlier when I was talking about doing prizes for the Knits from the Crypts. I am wearing my Carapino, which I did cardiganize. What? Yes, you can see that it is a cardigan now. And it gets much more wear already. I know, now if I just had pockets on it, I could totally put pockets on it. There's like patch ones on the outside. But yeah, ta-da! It's a sweater now. It's a cardigan. I don't know what I'm talking about. But so yes, I'm very pleased with how that turned out. Again, if you weren't here around last couple times, I just steeked it and it worked out really well. So yay that. Now I want to like go through everything I own that I haven't worn really soon and try to what's that guy called? Frankenstein. Really? I want to do that to all my stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally just like cut these pants up the side where I don't like how narrow they are at the bottom, and I'll just put in that like early 2000s, maybe not even then, but even earlier than that. Yeah, definitely probably more like when I was in high school, where you put in like the gusset of like contrasting fabric. Oh yeah, I can totally do that. I'm 40 almost, but I can totally pull that off. I'm wearing braids. I can do anything. I'm an animal. So then the other thing I finished, the last thing I finished, I should have done like a sneakier reveal on that. Oh well. I had started my hitchhiker last week. This is where you start, down here. Boink. Last time we talked, I started on a hand-spun hitchhiker. This is yarn that I spun. It was a Hello Yarn patchwork kit. And that's just like her like bits and bobs, her end pieces of all of her club shipments and other dyeing things. And then she just puts them together in a family that look good. And so I chain plied it. And I love it. Mostly for this gold stripe, I'm not gonna lie. But I love all of it. And I'm very pleased that I made it. I think I talked about this last time. I've tried to make hitchhikers before, but I've always done them with fingering weight yarn. And I've just been like, this is going to be so tiny. It's never going to go around my giant human body. And I get discouraged and stop before I even really get very fertile. But this yarn is more like a sport. Maybe even more like a DK weight. So you can just wear it like a scarf. You don't have to wear it like a shawl. So it's very easy to wear. And it's pretty. And it's going to make you want to spin more yarn all the days. Right. I put a picture of a sheep on my lock screen on my device, my internet-y device, in the hopes that I would look at it and be like, do I really need to be on the internets, or could I be knitting or spinning the wools? I don't know if it's worked yet. So anyway, I think that is all for this week. So I hope you have a wonderful time of a great, safe, happy New Year's. Many wishes for an awesome 2018. It's gotta be better, right? It's gonna totally be better. And I'll talk next time. Bye.